Good day, everyone. And today we're going to be working still on Module 2. However, the program that we're going to be using is going to be about the web. This is a three-part program, and hopefully you'll be able to sit through all of it. It's a pretty good one. So let's get started. So the web itself is what we're talking about. Let's talk about the objectives for today. Explain the role of the web in daily life. Describe websites and web pages. Use e commerce. Explain how information literacy applies to the web searches and research, and conduct online research. Some of the terminology that we're going to be using is the internet, of course, web pages and websites. And under browser, we have navigate, home start page, and hyperlinks. Now, when it comes to a web page, you have to start out with some type of protocol. A protocol is a set of rules that everyone has to follow, so we all know how the website is gotten to. All right, so you start with a protocol, which is hypertext transfer protocol, which is HTTP, which is what you'll see at the very beginning of a website's address. The server address is the www dot CNN, as you can see, is the breakdown.com, of course. That's the actual server. And as far as the path goes, the path is the entire thing. So it would be the showbiz slash movies.htm. Now, when it comes to the file name, you have a folder that's within the server that's called Showbiz. And within that, you have a file called Movies. And that's the full extent of the entire web page that you're going to. That's your file name. Now, within every website, they have an actual IP address that's located. But since we're humans, it makes it a little difficult to memorize 192.68.92.74, okay, as an example. But it's much easier to remember a name of www.cnn.com. So it attaches a human name to that IP address, just like there's one for MSN, there's one for Google, and so forth. Now here, they're showing you a dictation of how a website's going to look at the very top. The very top has the address bar. And underneath that is the cache. When I say cache, we're talking about a memory location. All right. It's just holding what you did at that site if you went to that site. Okay. And underneath that, you have breadcrumbs. Now, breadcrumbs are just like with Hansel and Gretel. You're following a trail of where you last stopped at. Okay. And on this one, they show that home page and they went to server, they went to about us, a home page again, latest newsletter. These are all breadcrumbs. These are spots that the user has clicked on to open up to take a look at. Now here, you're going to have the domain names. Now these domains actually sit higher than the server. The server sits within the domain. And you'll have extensions like .biz or .com, some of the more common ones. .com means it's a commercial site. .edu means that it's an academic site. .gov is a government site. .int, international treaty organizations. .mil are military sites, and so forth. I'm not going to go through each one, but you get the point. All right, so internet standards, they had to come up with some type of standard way that all sites had to follow to make it so that they can talk to each other and so that it makes it easier for the user to understand. So a team of folks sat down called the IETF, or the Internet Engineering Task Force, and they set standards that allow devices, servers, services, and applications to work together across the internet. And they set the standards for how routing data is actually going to be passed. Okay. So another group that's famous is the W3C. This is the World Wide Web Consortium. Okay, another group of folks. They set the web standards on topics ranging from building web pages to technologies for enabling web access from any device, to browse and to search engine designs. Okay. So here they've broken down into categories. You have banking and finance, you have entertainment, and then you have portals. Now, as you can see, there's a listing of different types of sites that break out from there. Underneath the portals, though, I want to call your attention to web app and software as a service. That's SaaS. These are applications or something like, let's say that you use Photoshop. Well, Photoshop, no longer you can buy it as a separate program. You have to go up to the website and use it. That is SaaS. That's an example of that. Okay. But that's because Adobe has decided that that's what they were going to do. So you have to go to the Adobe website that's up on the web, okay, for you to be able to access Microsoft. I'm sorry, to be able to use Photoshop, Adobe Photoshop. But some of the other ones underneath entertainment, you'll find government and organizations, which I thought was a little odd, but you'll also find stuff like media sharing and news, weather, sports, and such. They're all listed under the entertainment category. Now, some of the pros and cons of being able to use web apps, I'm not going to read all of these, but just to highlight, one of the biggest I think one of the biggest ones about pros is that you're able to access it from any device that has an internet connection. But one of the biggest cons is that if you lose your your internet connection, you're no longer able to access anything. The rest of these are kind of dependent on the same thing. Save when it comes to a pro, you can save storage space on your device, which is nice. But the opposite side of that is if the web app provider goes out of business, you can lose all your files. So there's a lot of if if then else's that kind of run into this one. Now, the major components of a web page are set up on this screen here, right? You have five major areas. You have a header, which is the very top section of any web page, and then you have a navigation bar. Navigation bar is going to be just a list of menu items that you can go to within that website. So let's say that you're looking for something in particular, or maybe a contact information. You'll find that in the navigation bar. In the very center section of this particular web page, you have the body. The body sometimes will have a picture and maybe a caption underneath, or maybe it holds certain information for you, like phone numbers and addresses to the particular business. On the side, you'll see that there's two sidebars set up. Those sidebars sometimes will hold menu items also, and they also have information, additional information that you might want to go to, maybe links to another site that has the same kind of information for you. And then there's the footer. The footer is the very bottom section. And a lot of times, footer will hold contact information or proprietary information, such as where we're located and such. Okay, so if we go to a website and it asks us for information like our social security, or maybe maybe our age, things of that sort, they're typically going to be encrypted. Now, the encryption to safe is set up to safeguard transmitted information. Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure, or HTTPS, is the one that you're going to be looking for. If you don't see that at the beginning of the web page, do not enter any information that is personal to you. No security, no bank site numbers, no phone numbers, no social security numbers. Okay. Use what they do to make this work is they use a digital certificate to vouch for the authenticity of the website. Okay. And all this is a handshake that says, I am the real computer that handles this. And no one else has this secure uh, Lego that goes the um, in front of the web page listing. What it's going to look like is an icon that looks like a lock. If you see that, it is probably going to be an HTTPS, but those two have to agree. So look for both of them to be there. Okay. And normally it requires a sign in with a username password before entering the sensitive information. However, if you're buying or purchasing an item and they want your credit card information, typically they will take you straight to an HTTPS site. Okay. Here, we want to talk about the daily life goings on when it comes to e-commerce. Okay. And there's three setups. You have a business to consumer, a consumer to consumer, and a business to business. Now, we all know that not all businesses have all of the pieces, parts that they need to create their end product. So very often they'll have connections to another vendor who will supply some of the pieces, parts they need. It could be something as simple as just a set of screws that they need to uh, put that particular production item together. When it comes to, now that would be business to business, and I know I'm going backwards, but that's the way I want to go today. Consumer to consumer. These are times where a consumer has gone out and said, hey, I have this particular item and I wish to sell it, and I don't want to put a middleman in the middle of it. So customers look at this item and say, you know what, I could use that lava light. I'm going to buy it from you. Business to consumer, this involves the sale of goods and services to the general public. All right. Some of the pros and cons on e-commerce is that you have a variety of items that you can do, different types of products. It's very convenient and it fits the budget. Now you don't have to have a third party person in the middle of all of that. And when it comes to the cons, you have issues with security, and you also have fraud that can happen, which makes it a very ugly thing. The consumer might lose out on some of on their money because they think they're going to the correct site, and when in actuality they're not. And indirect experience. They may put personal uh, or sensitive information out on the web because they didn't realize that they were not going to a secure site. This could add for a very long day because now you have to go back and tell all the vendors that, hey, this number is no longer any good. Things of that. At this point, I'm going to end this slideshow. This is the end of part one of three parts. When we come back, we'll talk about e-commerce and the business transactions that you can perform. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in part two.